Hey everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I'm going to be taking kids movies and turning them into horror movies, starting with WreckIt Ralph. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but I am a little sick, so I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little off in this video. But anyway, one of the reasons that WreckIt Ralph popped into my mind right away when I thought of this video idea is because of the design of Ralph. Now, WreckIt Ralph, for those of you who don't know, is a story about a video game villain basically wanting to be a hero, and I won't spoil any more than that if you haven't seen it. But because of that, he actually has a very easy to villainize character design. Even though he is the good guy of that movie, he is perfect for the slasher genre, so that is right away where I put this whole design. And basically for this whole video, I'm trying to take the characters from the movie and sort of make a fake horror movie poster for them. That's sort of the idea. So I'm going to put typography of the new title and everything as part of the drawings. So I thought he fits in very well with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of slasher genre that horror sometimes has going on. I also gave him a hockey mask just to really drive home that sort of serial killer-y look to him. His hair is already pretty wild and spooky looking, but I made it a little spikier and a little bit more wild, and I gave him an axe. Partially just so that he has a threatening weapon, but also because he has that stump at the start of the movie, and I thought it would make sense for him to have an axe with which to cut down trees. And he has this sort of plaid outfit, which again is very good for the hillbilly murderer trope that is in horror movies. And for the colors, I mostly wanted to do a mixture of purple for the background and then sticking to his original color palette, which is primarily reds and oranges. That would have good contrast and whatnot. And because I'm trying to make it look more like a poster and be a little bit more full and atmospheric than a lot of my character-only drawings, I decided to do some more painting techniques and things in the background so that it just has a little bit more depth and looks a little bit more interesting than just paint bucketing the whole thing. In the movie, his overalls are unsnapped on one side, which looks really cute and quirky in the film, but looks quite creepy and deranged in this drawing, so that worked out really well. Honestly, with Ralph, I barely had to change anything other than the inclusion of the hockey mask and, of course, the axe, which he didn't originally have. I wanted to focus a lot on lighting so that we had a very spooky, creepy sort of look to everything. So I did an overlay layer and just sort of cut out some more light areas and then smudged it all out so it looks soft. But then I had to put in the typography. So I changed the title to Stab It Ralph, even though he has an axe, which I guess is more of a chopping kind of thing. But stabbing is such a key part of the slasher genre, so I also thought it just looked a little bit more spooky as a title. And then I put a little, candy colored pixelation on the axe. I didn't want to get too bloody or gory, but I thought that would be really ominous because Vanellope has this sort of pixelating, glitching ability, and it kind of makes it seem like he might have killed her with this axe, but without making it too bloody and gross. Next up, let's do Tangled. Tangled is one of my favorite Disney princess movies that they've ever released, especially recently. And for this one, I thought, well, it would be great to take the Japanese ghost horror genre and work that around Tangled because she has all this hair, and Japanese female ghosts are often seen with all this black hair over their face, particularly in The Grudge and Ringu. So I thought that would be good for her. Also, she would make an easily tragic ghost. If she doesn't escape her tower, she's just going to die there, and that would be quite a miserable life just in capture her whole entire life. She was literally kidnapped. It's actually quite a scary idea when you really think about it, and most of these Japanese ghosts also have some legitimate trauma that led to them becoming these vengeful spirits. So really, I think Rapunzel works very well for this genre in general. So I had her sort of pose like a scary ghost, a little disjointed, a little off-center, and I gave her these sharp fingers. I, of course, put the hair all over her face. We really only want to see one eye and just a glimpse of her face. That sort of mystery makes it even creepier and weirder. And in general, I just wanted her to look very tormented and spooky, like Japanese ghosts often are. So imagining this as a real horror movie, I think it would be best if it was set in modern day and we had either ghost hunters or some sort of excavators find her tower and start exploring through it, looking for a treasure or something, and then they would come upon this ghost, this sort of tormented spirit who's never been let out from the deepest, darkest part of the tower, and basically they would be able to escape the haunting if they could just like open every window in the tower or something and then finally let her out, or maybe make their way all the way down the spiral staircase down the center or something like that. I feel like there's a way to definitely make a really scary story around the tale of Rapunzel. I actually wonder, I don't know if anyone's ever done that before, but yeah, she's basically like a kidnapped like captive, so it seems like it'd be very easy to do. I gave her a little shackle broken off on one of her arms, and again, yes, those very scary black hands. I wanted her to be scratching into the walls, stuff like "let me out" and stuff like that, because again, a lot of ghost stories, even not Japanese ones necessarily, but most ghost stories that I tend to be a fan of have a ghost that has some legitimate grievance, like something bad actually did happen to them and they just want some sort of closure. I think that adds some complexity to your ghost character, which I think can really improve a horror movie. For the colors, I'm mainly just using the actual colors from the movie and then just making it a lot darker and creepier. Though again, like I said, there's enough dark stuff in Rapunzel that I didn't have to reach too far. There's a lot of like dark and shadowy parts of the movie where she's still in the tower. So that's what I mainly used as inspiration. And I desaturated her golden hair because it looks a little too nice and glowy and we want it to be desaturated and dark and creepy. And then I used the Silent Hill font for the title. Now, this one didn't immediately pop into my head, but once I thought of it, I couldn't believe that I hadn't thought of it earlier, and it is Inside Out. Now, Inside Out was a Pixar film that came out not too long ago. It won a bunch of awards, and a lot of people have said it's been really helpful in sort of navigating their own mental health and stuff. So I thought, what better to do with this movie that's helped so many people than degrade it into something about a crazy young serial killer. So this time I'm combining Inside Out with basically Silence of the Lambs, because Inside Out is all about her psychology. I thought that it would be great for her to be this criminally insane murderer and basically just use a lot of imagery from Silence of the Lambs. It's one of the scariest thriller horror movies that I've ever seen, so I definitely wanted to give it a nod in this video at some point. So here Riley is, our main character, and she's basically in exactly the position that Hannibal Lecter was in part of the Silence of the Lambs movie. It's a very creepy scene, and it's just a very scary film. I don't recommend watching it if you're young. And basically I just wanted this idea to be that the emotions in her head that we see characterized in the film are actually like these bad impulses in her that caused her to kill. So instead of joy, we have like this sadistic little character that takes pleasure in the pain of others, and then there's like, instead of just anger, it's like rage, and fear is like just anguish, and yeah, it's just basically the edgiest possible version of Inside Out, with her as this criminally insane young murderer. And I suppose if we really want to lean into the name, let's say that instead of being a cannibal like Hannibal Lecter, she turns people inside out, because of course I had to. So for the color palette of this one, it's very similar to the Rapunzel one, only a little bit brighter, because I am mimicking Silence of the Lambs, and a lot of the scary parts of Silence of the Lambs, at least involving Hannibal Lecter, are in these sort of bright, clinical, prison-y looking areas, and I find that the brighter grays can be very spooky too, and I wanted to distinguish it from the other drawings that I've done. I also just wanted to make sure that each horror genre that I picked from for each of these movies was different. I didn't want just a whole bunch of slasher movies, because that wouldn't be quite so interesting. Again, I'm using a dominant shadow and then cutting light out, rather than my usual style of just putting in the shading and having everything I set down as the mid-tone. This is a great way to get a sort of more ominous, muddy looking, spooky atmosphere. I actually went in with some darker shadows after I had done those first steps because I wanted it to be more intense light. I fiddled around a lot with the title just to make sure it was in just the right place, and I stretched it out to look even creepier. And then lastly, I went in with a harsher light just to give it a really scary clinical look to it. And with that, we're done. Usually I like to do 5 drawings. I only did 3 this time because, like I said, I'm sick. I'm not feeling so good, so I'm slacking off a little bit. But let me know what you guys want to see next week. We got one more good weekend of October, so any spooky ideas that you have that you'd like me to do, now is the time to tell me. And I hope you guys are having a good week, a good October, and I will see you very soon. Thank you so much to my patrons, including Bambo, Cal Pompon, Cat Pupchino, Dr. Casket, Dustin Williams, Elizabeth Alvin, Hanuki, Hope Chilsum, JJ Jade, Blep, Blah 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 Blah, Matthew Kunke, Micah Dactyl, Okamore, Ollie, Rachel Singh, Rosie Warlock, Sergeant Pendulum, The Artsy Moose, Your Boy ST, Zixith, and Zoe Stardust.